Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Kim. How are you today?
Well, thanks. How about you?
Pretty good, thanks.
Good to see you. Um, we had a really exciting last week when we did a podcast on property versus paper. We getting a lot of questions. We got emails. People want to know how to, right?
Yep.
And I thought that we could follow up with that podcast and do like a part two.
Okay.
Um, that part two would, be able to correlate more the note to the property, right? And how
hmm
some of the thought process, especially my Burr community, when we think about, how we fix and flip or fix to rent, that kind of thing, there's a lot of correlation. And it really, stirred up a few things, and people got excited, and and the questions were coming in, and so I said, okay, this is calling for another podcast, and so um, we talked about it a little bit, so I know you know what we're going to talk about, and I thank you for joining me and that you bringing your experience to the table, and helping people understand how the same mindset that they have for the hard real estate, right, the physical property, they can transfer that same mindset right into the mortgage notes, right? So,
Absolutely.
so before we get started, let me just say that we're the disclaimer: we're not CPAs, we're not financial planners, we're not attorneys, but we are real estate investors, and specifically in mortgage notes. And we just want to share what our expertise is and our experience. And so this is for information, education purposes only. Um, but very excited to share this information with our community. So I'm gonna let you get started. Of course, I'll join and try very hard not to take over.
Well, please, I hope you do join in. So anyway, um, what sparked this is that many of the folks that are viewing are real estate investors.
Yes.
And as a real estate investor, we have this terminology or language that we use that we're very familiar with. And as we're thinking about notes, that language translates over to the note world as well. We just use, or at least the terminology and the terms translate over. We use different words.
Well, it's like a culture, right? It's a
Yeah.
it's a familiarity that those who do real estate investment with the physical property, there's a real culture and understanding and a given that takes place over time. So I think that's the kind of thing that you're talking about, that you can
Yep.
just translate that over to mortgage notes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that you hear a lot about, or you do if you're in the hard asset world, is you've heard about fix and flips.
Hmm.
That's where you buy a property, you fix it up, and you dispose of it, sell it, whatever, after you completed your fix up.
Right.
In the note world, a comparable scenario is we buy a non-performing note, a note that someone is not currently making payments on, or they may be paying slowly on that note.
Right.
We'll either call it a non-performer or we'll call it a scratch and dent if it's a slow pay. We'll typically buy that at below the price that the ultimate note is worth, um, and we call that buying it at a discount.
Hmm.
Just like with a house, if you're going to rehab it, you're not going to pay the ARV for the house.
Right. Right.
In our world, that's called paying par.
Yes.
So we're going to buy it for less than par or less than the ARV, um, and take our discount. We'll fix it up, and then on the backside, be able to cash out on that some kind of way.
So let's talk about what that fix up looks like for a note, you
hmm
know, and when you have a quote unquote scratch and dent or something that's just not been paying, but
hmm
we still invested in it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. Because as with any type of an investment or real estate investment or something that is if you're investing in something that is a um, less than pristine investment, you want to do something to kind of clean it up so that you can turn around and sell it for its real its real value to the rest of the world. So that's what we do. That's what we do when we buy a non-performer. We
Right.
just buy a note for less than the face value, turn it around, and then either sell it off or keep it in our portfolio. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in more detail a little bit later on in this discussion. Another thing that we do, and another thing that you do in the real estate world is you do rehabs. You know, we talked about fix and flip, but you also, going along with the fix and flip is a rehab. That's where you buy a property and again fix it up, but you may decide that you're going to keep it as opposed to selling it.
Hmm.
There are several options open to you. When we buy a non-performing note, we do the same thing. We go through, we fix it up, and then we have to make a decision on what we want to do. And when we do a rehab, we work with the borrower. That's what Kim was just alluding to a second ago. Um, and the idea is to see if we can get them to resume their payments.
Right.
Um, and if they resume their payments, it's like getting rent every month, collecting rent. Um, we may modify the loan. So when we modify the loan, we can change the terms. So in the real estate world, we've lowered the rent. If you're in commercial, we may have increased the number of years for your loan or something like that. So we modify the loan, we lower the rent, we may change the interest rate, change the terms, any number of things to help the borrower get back in good standing and to be able to pay. Finally, in our world, when we are doing a rehab, the final thing is we may take back the house.
Mm.
We may take back the house either through what we call cash for keys, basically paying the borrower to leave and give up their ownership, or we do it legally through the foreclosure process if we can't come to an agreement with the borrower on how to leave the property.
Right. Right. No, I think that, I just remember when I was heavily involved in fix and flips and fix and hold and um, buying at a discount, you know, as a investor, you buy properties at a
Yeah.
discount so that you can reinvest in it and make it more attractive,
Mhm.
either for yourself as far as payments are concerned, um, getting rent versus getting payments for mortgage notes, or it becomes more attractive to another investor, or maybe someone who's interested in buying the property to live in, right? But it's all about making it more attractive. But in order to do that, you have to buy it at a discount, right? To be able to make the investment that is necessary. And
Sure.
so these are those terms that you were talking about at the beginning that you understand, and you
Yeah.
just have to transfer that same mindset to mortgage notes, and you'll find that your investment looks the same. It's that it's just paper. And it can be, very lucrative and less stressful because why? There's no tenants, there's no termites, and there's no property management or anything like that, right? So
Yeah.
um, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you go on.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's interesting when we talk about rehabs. One of our partners was in the office the other day, and we were comparing notes on our days of doing rehabs, and the difference. One
Right.
difference is I'm not out in the hot sun in 100 degrees nailing something on a roof. I'm sitting in an air conditioned office.
Yes.
So um, it's a lot more fun to do a rehab on a note than it is to do a rehab on a house.
It
Um,
The weather today is just unbelievable. I don't
yeah,
recall enduring these climate changes when I was in the game of doing with the real property, but good goodness.
yeah. Uh, Another thing in the real estate world that you hear about is subletting.
Yeah.
In subletting, that's when you rent a property from an owner
Hmm.
and you may rent out a portion of that space to another party.
Hmm.
So basically, you're legally in possession of the property, but you don't need it all, so you're letting somebody else use the property and you're taking money from them in doing that. In the note world, we have a comparable scenario. we call it partials.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to hear partials in the note business. Just think sublet.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? So for a partial, I may own the note, or I will own the note, and so it is in my possession. I am legally responsible, or the payments are legally responsible to come to me. But then I may sell off some of those payments. I may decide that if it's a 30-year mortgage, as an example, I'm going to sell 10 years of the payments. Um, and why would I do that? So I can get some cash today.
Right.
I may also decide to sell part of a payment. Let's say I'm getting $1,000 a month and I want to sell off $500 a month. I'll keep 500 for myself and give the other 500 to somebody else. Again, I am selling those payments. And what does that mean? If you, without getting into all of the numbers and all the math, I'm selling off the value of those payments over time for an amount of money today.
Right.
And we'll do another podcast on partials where we may get into the numbers, but I'm not going to bore people with all the calculations
Right,
today.
because there's a number of ways that you can actually do partials, right?
Yeah,
Like you said, that's a whole nother podcast because there's not just one way to do
yeah,
partials.
yeah.
When I think about doing executing notes that way where you're paying for payments, if you will.
Mhm.
Airbnb arbitrage, people do it all the time where
Yeah,
they'll
yeah,
arbitrage another property. I'll
yeah,
admit I do it. Every summer I'm arbitraging another property for the benefit of, you know, I get to go on vacation in an area that I probably wouldn't be able to go to if I didn't arbitrage the property. So
yeah,
uh, so just like there's a number of ways to invest in real property to benefit from the investment from real property, again, you know, there's a number of ways you can benefit from mortgage note investing. And it might be even a little bit easier, I would say, in regard to once you understand how to make this work, uh, you tend to build a synergy and a momentum, and you find a number of ways to leverage your investment through mortgage notes. I'm going to be quiet.
absolutely.
You gave me
Yeah,
that look.
no, no, absolutely. And again, why would you want to do that? For the cash today.
Right. For the cash today.
You can either get the cash over the next 20 years, or you can get some cash today. And I tend to do this because there are always other investments that I want to get involved
Mhm.
in. And I use the money for another investment that I don't want to lose out on today so I can add that to my portfolio. Or, I may just want to pay a bill.
Right.
You know, um, I may decide I need a new car or vacation or something like that. So I'm
Right.
partial for the note. I can go to Belize. you know. So anyway, for the cash
That's on
today.
my bucket list, please.
Belize, yeah, yeah. I understand. Great point. Um, Another term that you use in the real estate world is a joint venture.
Yes.
And that's where you buy property with other investors. So, you have a building out there, an office building, whatever, you don't have all the money. So you get other people to chip in to pay for that. We do the same thing in the note business. There are times when, I guess a comparable scenario where we'll form a joint venture to get a bunch of people together to buy a note, and it may be a big note, maybe a small note. It really depends on what we want to do, and what we're trying to do to encourage other people to invest with us. So again, joint ventures, you're familiar with those. In many cases, many of you have done those in the hard asset world. We can do that in the real estate world as well. And quite frankly, the documentation is pretty much the same.
No, really. It's, again, it's a level of comfort, it's a level of understanding. Just like when you're rehabbing a property, your options become available to you. You may change your mind. I remember a property I had every intentions of holding it. But, before I can finish it, I was getting all these offers and, they were fabulous offers. Yeah, it
Yeah.
didn't just make sense. And so I could take the money and do what I intended to do, just again. But when you were talking about the joint venture, I wanted to also add that um, something else that we've been doing is that with the joint venture, you said we would joint venture for a note, but we've joint ventured for several notes, right, at one time, which was an opportunity to obtain more notes, right? It's sort of like a group of you coming together and owning an apartment building. Instead of all those doors, we now have all these notes, all
Yeah.
because we came together and joint ventured on a particular number of notes that we invested in at one time. And, there's been some very good results from doing something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's not widely talked about, or, no one really expresses that, but we have a good time. It's the best I can say. We have a good time with
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
our co-investors and obtaining these notes all at once.
Absolutely. And that's a great example. Um, you know, uh, I like the example of it's like an apartment building.
Right, it's like an apartment building.
So you get together with a bunch of folks, you buy a bunch of notes. It's like an apartment building. We do it for a lot of reasons. One is to spread our risk
Right.
and improve our return.
Yes.
So we can get a return over a bunch of different notes. Um, and that works out really well for a lot of us. The other thing is it allows us to be able to invest less capital in any one transaction.
That's right.
So
That's right.
again, one of the reasons you may want to do a joint venture in the hard real estate world is to be able to get into a lot of different places and to use less capital per investment. And you can do the same thing with us.
And when
Or
you
you can do
have
the same
good
thing with you.
partners,
Yeah.
right?
See?
This is when you have good joint venture partners.
Yeah,
This is something you can do over and over again, right?
absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
familiarity of the process and the transaction becomes innate, and expectations are not a surprise. And but everything, of course, is documented. But um, it's just that it just brings about a whole different momentum in this particular sector of investment. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about JVs. I think there's another area in the hard real estate world I want to talk about as well. There are times when we own a piece of property and we want to cash out some of it. We don't want to get
yeah,
rid of the property,
right,
but we want to get some of the cash, that has that's available to us because of appreciation or whatever. So we'll do a refi. We may decide to go out and get a mortgage on a property, something like that.
right.
In the note world, we use a big fancy word for that called hypothecation.
Apothecary,
You know, um, and I
another
have to
good
say,
friend of ours.
yeah. Um, so with hypothecation, what we do is we will buy a note, assume the ownership of that note, but then go out and borrow against that note with an investor. So, and when I do that, I give the investor a collateral interest, or I'll assign a collateral interest in that note.
Right,
A net result is they're giving me a loan, which is collateralized on the note. If you go back to the scenario of I go out and I refi the building that I own, I take money from the bank and I assign a note to the bank saying that or a mortgage to the bank saying that if I don't pay, they get my building.
right,
With a hypothecation of a loan, a note, I do the same thing.
right.
If I don't make the payments as I've agreed, the person I borrowed the money from can take my note.
Right. They have the documentation in hand in which they have that interest that they can leverage because their investment is still collateralized.
Yeah. And, it's one hypothecation is one of those things that is a major eye opener for folks that are in the note space, because it really is how we make notes, owning notes, look like hard assets, hard real estate, because it's kind of I'm borrowing money on a loan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're you're
it's not,
you're realizing those payments in advance.
yeah, yeah,
You don't have to wait on it. You could just go
no,
ahead
no,
and
it's not like it's something that I grew up thinking about when I was a little kid.
no. And nor did anyone tell us anything like this. We were supposed to be thinking about it as a little kid.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's another podcast. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So, so anyway, like I said, it's a big word, fancy word, hypothecation. Um, we like to do that as well, and it is a way to borrow against a note, and again, get cash today to do other things, whether it's investing in other notes, which we will do, investing in other activities. That's another way to do it. So I like the note business for that because it gives me a lot of options for ways to be able to redeploy capital.
Right.
Now, finally, thinking about, we've talked about all of these ways that we can take money out of a note and still own it. One of the things that we can do in the hard money space, or in the note space, as investors, you're used to dealing with hard money lenders. I talked about, being able to take money out of my investments, out of my notes, to be able to put them in other investments. But one of the things that we'll do is private lending. So, you know, when you go out to a hard money lender, where do they get their money? They get it from people like us that take money out of a note and invest it at whatever the going rate is for hard money in your area.
Right.
So we can do private money lending as well, which is another piece of a note space. And it's another way to generate a note.
Right. I think that you know, if when you become more and more familiar with note investing and understanding the investment you have in hand and understanding what your options are, like I did, I moved away from real property.
Yeah,
I do all of my investing now in mortgage notes, and in the different capacities that you discussed in on this podcast, because it then develops different streams of income, right?
yeah,
At different times.
yeah,
So you're not dependent on the first of the month, waiting for someone to pay their rent, for example, right?
sure.
You can leverage your note to work for you. You know that this is truly an opportunity where your money's working for you, where you are growing wealth, where you can use money to your advantage, all within the scope of the investment of the entity that you have in place.
Mhm.
You can change your strategy without, without, getting rid of the property or selling the property, or, like you said, we don't have to sell the note. You can borrow against it. You can sell against it. You can create relationships with it, etc.
Yeah,
Um, and I think these are all the things that, it might sound like, wow, this is too much, or I'm not sure about this. But when it just like the culture of the real property that takes place as far as real estate investment, there's a real synergy, there's a real network, there are people that you can talk to that have done all of this, et cetera, et cetera. That same type of dynamic happens with mortgage note investing. And before you know it, you're speaking the language and you're very much involved. And and you have notes that you want to see what you could do with it to make it better for you, right? For
yeah,
what your investment, how this is going to work. I was telling someone that our expertise is, and we love it, is investing in non-performing, as well as in seconds. But we have been doing more first lien position investing as well. And I was actually training someone, and they said, it's so boring. Why would I want to do this? It's you get the note and you wait on a check, just like the first month. And then I talked about partials. Let's sell some of those payments you have there. Let's talk about how you can leverage what you have in place, because this is a very secured, right? Very and appealing, and something that you can sell payments. You can sell 10 payments if you want to, or sell, 50% of it. Or like I said, there's different ways you can go about selling part of that note, right? As a partial.
Yeah.
Oh boy, the lights, the brights, the eyes. They got wide open, and now it's like, okay, how many more of these I can get so I can go ahead and, because he likes the whole idea of, partials. And so I do too. And so, but, unless you're there, unless you have someone to talk to, unless you have the synergy, your network, who knew? Like you said, no one was sitting around talking about this. So
No,
this is
no.
good. So I rambled again. I'm sorry. Uh,
Well, it's fun. We've talked about a lot of things here. Basically, it's you want to build a portfolio of assets, and this is a way to build a portfolio of assets. What we've been talking about today is how to connect the dots between what you're doing now, what you already know, and this world. It's basically the same thing.
right. Yeah.
Um, you build a portfolio of rental properties or apartment buildings or whatever your specialty is, and you don't want to you want to keep those assets. We do the same thing with the notes. One of the biggest advantages in what Kim is talking about right now is that we can, with a note, there are lots of different ways we can take cash, bring cash into our world with that note without getting rid of the note.
Without getting rid
One
of
of
the
the
note.
biggest benefits that we have is that being able to get cash up front today and still own the note. It's a
Right.
lot harder if in the physical real estate world, because trying to get a mortgage is not that easy. Trying to get something refied is not that easy. There's a box that you have to be in order to make that happen. On
Right.
our side of the world, because the notes are collateralized, because the payments are steady, normal, secure, it's easier for us to be able to take cash out of that investment. There are a number of people, number of entities that are looking for that steady, regular, secure return.
Right.
So we're able to do that.
Right.
And
And
so
like you
that's,
said, that was a good point too about how you could diversify your own portfolio with your own notes,
yes.
um,
Yeah.
and to give that payment or revenue stream different opportunities to be paid. The same
Sure.
note can bring you money on the first and bring you money on the 15th. So
Yeah, right. You can do that too. Yeah. I think one final thing that I want to talk about,
sure.
and with one of the things that you hear a lot about in the hard real estate world is seller financing.
Oh yeah.
And you think about, well, I want to buy this building. And can I get the seller to take back paper? As a hard real estate investor, you can sell property with seller financing, and you be the beneficiary of getting those payments every month. I just closed on a property on a seller finance deal last Friday. And it was a house that I'd owned for 7, 8 years, and I sold it to the tenants. And I'll be getting, instead of getting rent, I now get a mortgage payment for the next 30 years. Or, my grandkids get the mortgage payment. I don't know. Someone gets the mortgage payment. So that's something else that is another part of being in the note investment world. And as you learn more about this, those are the kinds of strategies and things that come to you very, very quickly, very, very easily, and you can put the paperwork together very quickly.
Yeah. I think we'll also touch on a really good podcasts. I don't want to get into it in this one because I think it's unfair to just mention it and not move forward on it. But I just want to also tell people to continue watching our podcast because we share these types of nuggets, right? We share maybe the uniqueness and some of the opportunities that notes offer. And I think that our next podcast, I hope it's the next one, where we can talk about how you can even leverage your properties that you own. I mean, for those like myself that have properties, because I was in the real property investing in real estate. Mortgage Notes has shown me something new that I can probably take advantage of with my other investments. And so, but I think we'll save that for another podcast. But
Cool.
again, um, you know, the world of mortgage note investing is fabulous, just fabulous. So this was great. Did you have another? Seems like we could be
Nope.
talking about this all day
That's
long.
yeah, that's it for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was looking forward to this. I'm sure that these will and this discussion will answer a lot of questions that people had for us. It was amazing,
Yeah.
and the feedback and the phone calls and people almost tapping on your window. So, you know, they had questions. They wanted to learn more about it, and so I hope this helped. Again, continue to let us know if we need to discuss anything more. You're always welcome. And if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us via our website at www.firstshieldfinancial.com. And thank you again for giving us your time and giving us the opportunity to share what we know and teach and love to connect with others on this. All right.
One final thing, if you like what you heard, hit the like button. If you want to learn more, please subscribe.
And please subscribe. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.